hope I'm audible. Thanks, Craig. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lichi Kunath. As part of the product management team in UiPath, I focus on building solutions around human-robot collaboration and process orchestration. So today, we're going to talk about UiPath apps. So I want to set the stage by saying that UiPath apps is an overarching product name for all the business user-facing interactions from UiPath, right? So all business user-facing interactions, we are putting it together in an overarching product theme called apps. And for V1, we are focusing on human-in-the-loop solution, which is more form-based, custom form-based solution that we are providing. You have callouts, you have triggers to start with. But in future, you will see much better, richer app building experience coming out from us. So for next 30 minutes or so, we will have a discussion about the upcoming feature around human-in-the-loop solution, which is more about how an unattended bot can interact with human, and then how a seamless handoff between human and robot happens, right? Okay, so this depicts the typical crawl, walk, run story of an enterprise automation journey. So some of our discussions with our customers, we understand that they start with the repetitive stable processes that RPA handles very effectively today. Now, once those base processes are automated, they start requiring more complex, rule-based, and the solutions that requires more unstructured data handling. And at that point in time, the AI and ML solutions that we have helps robots take on wide spectrum of automation tasks. But then as they graduate from atomic task automation to more end-to-end business process automation, that's when we need to enable human process handoff more seamlessly. So with a bunch of feature set that we are delivering as part of platform, as part of platform enhancements, as part of AI and ML, we are sure that UiPath will be able to bring more value to the RPA deployments as they progress in the automation journey. So that's where we are moving towards. Now, most of us here in the room, from our rich RPA experience so far, most of us understand variants of hybrid scenarios that requires human-robot transitions. So back office automation is very much effectively handled today by unattended bots, whereas attended automation delivers on human-assisted scenarios. So with UiPath apps version 1, we are focusing more on comparatively underrepresented scenario, but we believe which is also more critical when it moves towards end-to-end business process automation, is the unattended to human to unattended handoff kind of scenarios. So this becomes even more critical when enterprises have started operationalizing AI through RPA. So robot would need just-in-time, on-demand assistance for validations or approvals or kind of foolproof exception handling. So that is where this solution becomes very critical. So what is the solution from UiPath? Today, any typical robot task executes for a limited time span. We understand that when we move into an end-to-end business process automation perspective, this processes span across multiple departments, multiple owners, and this will take more than a few minutes. It could take more hours or days to complete execution, often waiting on probably some external events or schedules. So we have built a framework, what we call as long-running workflows, to design and execute such long-running processes, such end-to-end long-running processes. So that's the first layer into it. Now, we have introduced an ability for robots to create human tasks during workflow execution. Now, human tasks by nature makes a workflow long-running, right? Because by the time human comes and performs this task, we do not want robots to continuously monitor or poll, waiting on human input. Same the case for human, right? We don't want humans to continuously monitor and when I have to really provide input to robot. So that's the reason we have built this event-driven approach where the long-running workflow framework and task becomes one of such long-running activity. So our solution involves enhancements to process monitoring also, because we are now introducing long-running workflows. You're bringing human to the picture. So of course, it is inevitable that we have to enhance our process monitoring. We have done some jobs level enhancements. Of course, this is V1. We will have much better process monitoring enhancements coming in future. Now, most importantly, we have baked in all these features into UiPath platform components, which means we have enhancements to Studio, we have an activity pack, we have Orchestrator services enhanced, so no new installations. That's the core. Now, we'll a little bit deep dive into what each of these components means, and then we'll quickly get into the demo, and then probably we can have some question and answers. So how do we really build these long-running workflows? As I mentioned, Studio is our process designer, right? And we will have a bunch of activities, long-running activities shipped from UiPath, which will help to build long-running workflows. And when the long-running workflows are executed, as and when robot executes a long-running activity, it suspends the workflow. What it means, the robot suspends workflow, and the robots are free to pick up anything else by the time this specific long-running activity is completed. So what we are trying to do by this is to give a platform where you can build a process that span across multiple RPA workflows, or span across human tasks in between. But robots are freed up as and when it's waiting for a long-running activity. Now, you can have multiple suspend points in a workflow, right? Because there are scenarios where you would need a job to be invoked, and then output of that you need to pass it to a human, and then probably at multiple points in time you need. So a job can go into a suspend state at multiple points. And the beauty of it is, as I said, it's event-driven. So as and when upon a job completion or a queue item completion or a human task completion, the process is automatically resumed. So it's purely an event-driven framework that we have come up with. So this is the core of long-running workflows. The benefits, I think we spoke about it. It's typically meant for orchestrating end-to-end business process. And we also believe that with this, our customers will be able to automate wider range of processes. Now, coming to tasks, as I said, what is a task? So we're talking about human tasks, right? What is a task? So tasks consist of set of business context or set of business data that you would like to present to the business user so that they can take some action. So that is what we mean by a task. Now, who creates these tasks? Robots can create these tasks when it is executing in an unattended mode or an attended mode, right? And business users can, and from who does work on this task? The business users can access these tasks from a web interface or a mobile interface. Need not be available right when the robot is actually executing the workflow. It can happen like at any point in time. They can access this task from a web interface or a mobile interface. For now, we have introduced that in Orchestrator, but we have built this entire stuff as set of services so that the scenarios where you would like to have this visualization of tasks elsewhere, we would like to also integrate with our partners who are probably much better in the task management aspects, right? So we are quite open from that aspect as well. And then what happens to the task, right? How does the task get assigned? This is the next question. So task assignments are handled outside the workflow definition for the sheer reason that whenever there is a change in the task assignments, you definitely would not like to redeploy your workflow, right? So the workflow assignments, the task assignments are decoupled from the workflow definition. And these assignments are driven by Orchestrator access control. So you build workflow, And then tasks are created, and tasks gets created in a specific folder. You would have heard about the folder concepts that's upcoming, which is more an containerized access control mechanism. And the users who have access to the right folder gets access to the task. So that way, the access to tasks are assignment to the task is decoupled from workflow. And then, like any other long-running activity, upon human task completion, the overall workflow resumes in any available robot. It need not be that the robot who made this whole workflow into a suspended state itself has to resume the workflow. It can be resumed in any available robot in that environment. And as I mentioned, this whole task management framework is built in a services way. So we could, in future, we plan to put this visualization in probably robot tray and probably a pure end-user portal kind of a scenario, or probably a third-party service or a custom UI, wherever applicable. And the benefits, the main benefit that we see is, so the main benefits that we see is more human-to-robot handoff. It's a seamless human-robot handoff. That's the main benefit that we see. And the wider range of scenarios like exceptions, approvals, or validations, that's exactly where we see our customers can benefit from this. And coming to process monitoring, as I mentioned, what we have done now is enhancements to our Orchestrator monitoring as well as jobs view or jobs monitoring to include the new states that we have introduced as part of long-running workflow. Previously, if you see a job has probably 2 or 3 states, which is mostly started, executing, and ended, right? Primarily, of course, you have faults and so on. But with this whole long-running workflow aspect, you have now new 2 states introduced, which is suspended and resumed. So we have monitoring enhancements where you could really go find out if a workflow is suspended, why is it suspended, what is it waiting on, so you get a kind of a resource bottleneck summary, right? So that's the enhancements that we have done to the process monitoring. So primarily what it helps is to identify and handle resource bottlenecks. Okay, so we'll quickly go to a demo. I have like 2 demo scenarios. Probably it's going to resonate more with you when I show how exactly it's. Okay. Sorry. So we have these features currently available in community. It's there in the studio community version, as well as in the cloud platform as well in the community version. These are available. So I'll start by explaining a workflow. Okay, so this is a new package explorer view of our processes that is deployed in Orchestrator without accessing Studio. This is also something we are introducing in the upcoming release. And so let's take the simple process, right? So this is a typical invoice processing. This blocks talk about it's reading a folder, and it has 2 invoices. It's using our ML model. It's extracting that, and then based on a specific confidence score, it's preparing some data for human validation, and then it's going to create a task in the workflow because it needs human validation, and then you can do n number of steps right after that. In this case, I'm just writing the data to a file before validation, and then I wait for that task for completion, because now my bot is kind of waiting for the input from the user before it can proceed to the next step. So we have, these are two new activities if you may have seen. So there is something called a create form task activity. I'll show you in the studio as well. This is just to explain the workflow. So here I create the task, and then after a bunch of steps, I kind of wait for that task. So whenever the robot reaches wait for a task activity, the workflow is suspended, because now robot needs input from the user before it can proceed to the next step. Now let's look at in studio what it means. So in the latest studio, you will see something called an orchestration process. So this is what I was talking about, that we provide a template or a guided procedure where you could implement a process by chaining multiple RPA workflows as well as inject human action. Right? So once you create an orchestration process, you will see a new category called long running coming up. This is coming from the new activity pack that we will be shipping. It has activities like start job, add queue item. So these are existing orchestrator activities, but we have built long-running variants of that, which means I can invoke a job, get a job object, and then I can suspend my robot to make sure that I proceed to the next step only after that specific job is completed. So it's more kind of event-driven. So job 1 is completed, it kind of wakes up the bot that I'm done, and then probably it can also pass some output parameters into it, and then I can proceed to the next step. So basically, it's a chaining of RPA workflows through either start job or queue item. Okay. So these are long-running variants of those activities. And here you see this is create form tasks that I just showed in the workflow. And these are like paired activities. You create form task or you start job. It doesn't really suspend the workflow. The moment you introduce a wait for a task or a wait for a job, that's when the workflow gets into a suspended state, right? So let's look at what it means to inject a human task. So this is the same workflow that we saw. So this is what it means to inject a human task. So it takes some basic task metadata like title, priority, catalog is like a business categorization. And as I mentioned, task is nothing but a bunch of business context or a bunch of business data, which has to be presented to the end user so that the end user can act on it and then send it back to the robot, right? So send some part of the workflow context, whatever you think is relevant that your end user needs to know as part of the form data. So this is the data collection. This can take complex objects, or it can take data tables, for example. So it's kind of dynamic set of data set that you can send to the form. And once you define the form data collection, you open the form designer. Form designer, we give you a auto-generated single layout generated view to start with, but the designer is open to you. So if you really want to build more sophisticated, more two-panel layout, any kind of forms, what is relevant for your end user, the RPA developer, the business experts can go build it, right? So that's all typically you do to inject a human task, right? So when robot executes a create form task, it internally creates a task for the human. Now, as part of the workflow, as I mentioned, I'm not really suspending my workflow there. I want to probably write before validation data to a file, or probably send an email about the task details. So I do a bunch of steps. And then at some point in time, I'm saying that, OK, from now on, I cannot proceed until I get this input from the user. Right? So at this point in time, I introduce this activity called wait for task and resume. And it's quite simple. The only input it takes is what is the task object I should wait on. And task object is something that you got as an output from your create form task activity. So just pass on to it. And the task action, if you see the form designer, I show you a button called submit. That's like a default submit action. But as a business expert or RPA developer, you will have probably OK, cancel, or approve, whatever exactly is relevant for your custom UI, right? So whatever the user has clicked, or that is what you get back as part of the task action, right? And I probably have missed telling one thing. Yeah. So in the form data collection, you would have noticed something called direction. So direction also has some impact. What it means is that whatever variables or arguments that are marked as in, out, or out are mapped automatically back to the workflow, which means if a user inputs something or changes something while performing the task, the changed business context is sent back to the robot, right? So, and that is defined through this specific direction here. So as an RPA developer, you really don't have to do a lot of JSON handling and so on. Whatever is the collection you have sent, whatever you expect your end users would have changed, you use the same variable right after the wait for task and resume, and you get that data back, right? So this is the simple thing. So let's execute this workflow. So this workflow is going to, in fact, look at my C invoices. I have 2 invoices, which is pretty bad invoices. It's kind of masked. So it's going to create tasks so that human can validate. And you see, this is the studio experience, right? So the moment a robot reached a wait for task and resume, it's suspended, and it said execution is suspended and wait for external events, right? Now, as an end user, I log into Orchestrator, and you will see a new menu item called tasks. Of course, this tasks menu item is access control, which means is, as a business user, you could just give access only to tasks and not everything else in Orchestrate, right? So that's privilege control. So these are the 2 tasks that just got created. It says that invoice field validation. And when I open that, so this is an invoice out of the 2 invoices where the bot was not able to extract the PO number. So this is the input that it is asking. So I'm just giving a PO number so that we can relate to it. And I submit. And in fact, it's waiting on 2 tasks because there are 2 invoices it is processing. So yeah, this is a pretty bad invoice. Apparently, it is not able to extract anything. This is for the demo purpose we made like this. Now, I'm still showing you I would say, a developer testing experience because I'm executing it from the studio, right? Now, both the tasks are completed. And now I can come to studio and say resume. Right? So what happens ideally is that it's completed. So now it goes and checks that, OK, I was waiting on 2 tasks, and is it completed? And my workflow ends by opening both the files. So let me just show you the file. So this was before the invoice. You see the PO number is empty. And this is results after invoice, where this is the input that I've given, right? So this, I did not really do anything. I just entered that value. It is automatically routed back to the workflow. And as in my workflow handling, I'm just writing it to the file. This is one example. Let me quickly take you through to another demo scenario, which is similar, just that I'm now chaining a process as well to it, and I'll show it in an unattended mode, right? So here I'm starting with an OCR extracted folder, and I'm checking whether it's a hypothetical classification. So if it's an invoice or a claim, if it's an invoice, I'm creating an invoice approval. It's a claim, I'm creating a claim approval. And then after creating all the tasks, I'm coming here, and I'm now waiting for the task, right? And then I have my handling where if it's a claim approve, I'm going to invoke a claim process. That's kind of a different unattended process itself. So I'm chaining human tasks and unattended jobs together in an Uber workflow. That's the whole process, right? So let me execute it from here. So I go to my jobs view. this is my process. I'm going to execute in my local bot. And now what it is happening, it's scanning these two invoices, two documents, and then it's going to extract that content, and then based on the classified data, it's going to create two tasks, and then this is an unattended bot, so it goes into a suspended state. So this is the new state management that we have brought in. Now what it means is the bot is now idly available. So if I really look at my robot, it is available, right? So it's not really taking up that. Now I should know why it is suspended. So you see a little details pane here, and you go to the triggers. Here you will see that it's waiting on two tasks, right? Task ID 214, which is like just created a few seconds ago, and task ID 213. So this typically what it says is that this job is in suspended state, waiting on two tasks to be completed. So now let me as a user, so since I'm an admin, I'm able to toggle between all these jobs and tasks, but if I'm just a task user, I'll just have access to tasks, right? So these are the two tasks that got created that was referred in that suspended job state. Let me go ahead, and this is a claim data, so I'm just giving some comments and approve. Now let's see the magic, right? So let me go back to the jobs view. Now you'll see that the job which got suspended is automatically resumed. So this is what I was talking by event-driven, right? There is no automatic polling. There is no continuous polling. The robot is not blocked. But the moment a human task is completed, it is resuming a workflow automatically. Now, what it did is, invoice and claim processing is my Uber workflow. It, in fact, based on that approval, it invoked another process called SAP expense processing, right? So I know a lot of things happened in the screen in between, and I was talking. So user approved a specific claim approval, and that as per my workflow, I in fact spawned another job internally, which is expense processing, and that's completed, right? Now it says this job is still waiting. Why is it waiting? Because it's still waiting on another task, right, which is task 214. Let me go ahead and complete that. So this is a bit more complex form. I have a header and line items. I could just go and probably reduce the quantity if that is needed. Probably I can add more rows depending on your scenarios, right? And then I'm going to approve this. Again, the magic happened. It's going to resume automatically, and it's going to spawn another process internally, which is called invoice processing. Now, let's look at the suspended state, right? So it's saying all the tasks are done, but now I'm waiting for a job completion. So I'm literally stitching together multiple jobs and tasks in an Uber workflow, right? So now it says I'm waiting on this specific job item. Once the job is completed, everything is done. So now literally what happened, let's look at these logs, right? You will see a consolidated log here. So what happened is invoice and claim processing started, then it internally triggered a claim processing, and then it also internally triggered a claim approval, right? So basically it kind of stitched together multiple processes and human tasks, and then eventually an end-to-end workflow was completed. So this is pretty much what we wanted to share about building process that spans across multiple workflows as well as injecting human actions. So I hope this is useful for you to automate much broader range of business processes, and we would like to hear the feedback from you on how it is helpful. Yeah, there are questions?
Yes, thank you. This is exciting. Two questions, like when is this, when will this be available?
It's already available in community. Enterprise is planned for our Q4 release. As part of our next LTS version, this will be available.
So do you have like other BPM process integration along? Is that in your roadmap?
Yeah, as I said, the whole task management piece is built as set of services. So we are quite open for our partner integration aspects there.
All right, just one more question, and then we'll take it offline to the booth.
Sure. Yes.
Just over here.
Assuming that we have one person that's responsible for a specific task,
Yeah. So in the next version, we will add some auto assignment aspects, right? So you saw something called categorization. So we'll have some auto assignment aspects added to that category, so that specific category, all the task items coming, you could just assign to one person automatically. Thank you. We have a booth, and we can discuss that further.
Thank you. That was great. All right.